The house became quiet again, not normal quiet. The kind of quiet where every small sound suddenly feels important. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the old ceiling fan turning overhead, the faint creak of the floor beneath shifting weight. Joshua stood near Debbie's bedroom doorway exactly where she told him to stay, but his eyes never stopped moving. Fear had already settled into the room, and once fear enters a place, ordinary silence begins to sound different. Debbie remained near the back door for several seconds, staring through the glass into the yard. Nothing moved. The strange men were gone now, at least physically, but their presence still sat heavily inside the house like something unfinished. Debbie had seen fear before, years earlier. She heard it in 911 calls. She heard it in trembling voices asking for help too late. She heard it in children crying in the background while adults whispered things they thought nobody else could hear. And now she heard it again, inside her own home. Slowly, Debbie turned back toward Joshua. He was trying hard not to show it, but she could see the panic building inside him little by little. His shoulders stayed tense, his breathing came shorter now. His eyes kept drifting toward the windows as if danger might suddenly reappear if he looked away too long. Joshua wanted to look calm, wanted to look grown, wanted to look like somebody prepared to handle whatever came next. But trauma has a way of exposing the child underneath survival. Debbie noticed him glance toward the curtain again, carefully, quietly, like somebody used to checking exits before feeling safe. That was when she realized something painful. Joshua did not know how to relax, not fully. Maybe he never had. Morning had already settled over the house, but nothing about the room felt peaceful anymore. Only minutes earlier, that same dining room had been filled with the smell of breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, grits, bacon, fried potatoes, sausage. Food Debbie had prepared with care, not just to feed Joshua's body, but to give him something he had been denied too many times in life. A table. A safe place. A reason to sit still. Joshua had eaten like someone trying not to show how hungry he had been. He tried to slow himself down. Tried to act like it was ordinary. Tried to behave like a young man who was used to warm plates being placed in front of him. But Debbie saw what he was hiding. She saw it in the way his shoulders stayed tense, even after the meal. She saw it in the way his eyes kept moving toward the windows. She saw it in the way he tried to stand taller than the fear inside him. Joshua wanted to be strong. He wanted to be the man in the room. But the truth was, the boy inside him had never been allowed to rest. When Debbie told him to go into her room and stay quiet, Joshua obeyed, but only halfway. He stepped away from the center of the house. But his mind stayed behind. He needed to know what was happening. He needed to see those men for himself. So when he thought Debbie wasn't watching, he moved quietly toward the window, not fast, not careless, slow, careful, like someone who had learned that every floorboard, every curtain, every breath could give him away. He lifted the edge of the curtain just enough to look out. The men were still there, standing in the backyard like they belonged there, like the house had already been marked. Joshua's throat tightened, his chest began to rise faster. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. He knew that type of danger, even if he didn't know those men personally. The uniforms were supposed to mean safety, order, protection. But Joshua's life had taught him that some uniforms only made the danger harder to question. He dropped the curtain quickly, too quickly. Debbie saw him. For a second, Joshua looked embarrassed, not because he had been caught disobeying her, but because he had been caught afraid. That was the part he hated. He could handle hunger. He could handle sleeping outside. He could handle being passed from one place to another by adults who called it placement, while he called it being unwanted. After a while, the house became still again. Debbie slowly released him, but her eyes stayed on him a second longer. She was reading him the way a mother reads a child who says, "I'm fine," while falling apart. Then she turned toward the back door. The handle felt cold in her hand. She opened it slowly and looked out. The backyard was empty. The strange men were gone. No movement near the fence. No shadows near the side of the house. No uniforms standing in the grass. Just morning light resting over the yard like nothing had happened. But Debbie knew better. Some threats don't leave. They only step out of view. Before she could breathe fully, the front door shook under a sudden pounding knock. Joshua flinched. Debbie froze. The sound filled the house differently this time. It wasn't just a knock. It was an announcement, a demand, a reminder that whoever was outside already believed they had the right to be heard. Debbie's hand tightened. Her first thought was Joshua. Her second thought was the children. Not just him. All of them. The 5 children. The case nobody liked saying too loudly. The case that had left too many questions and not enough bodies. The case that had sent children into the system while adults with badges and family connections got to control the story. Another knock came. Then a voice. Dotsie. Debbie stopped breathing for a second. That name. Nobody called her that anymore. Not neighbors. Not friends. Not church people. Not even the people who had known her for years. Only Captain Reeves had called her Dotsie, back when she worked under him. Back when he still believed procedure could save people? Back when Debbie still believed telling the right person the truth would be enough? That nickname reached into a part of her memory she had not opened in years. Fear did not leave her, but it changed shape. She walked to the door slowly. Joshua stayed behind her, tense and watchful. When Debbie opened the door, Captain Reeves stood on the porch, older now. But being seen scared? That cut deeper. Debbie didn't scold him. She didn't ask why he looked. She didn't lecture him about listening. She crossed the room and reached for him. At first, Joshua stiffened. His body did what it had been trained to do. Prepare, resist, protect. Don't lean too soon. Don't trust too fast. Don't let comfort fool you. But Debbie held him anyway, not tight enough to trap him. Just firm enough to remind him he wasn't standing alone. His heart was racing against her. She could feel it through his chest, fast and uneven, like it was trying to escape before the rest of him could. She placed one hand on the back of his head and the other against his shoulder, holding him with the kind of care that didn't ask him to explain himself first. And for a moment, Joshua stopped trying to be grown. He didn't cry. Not yet, but his breathing began to change. The sharp edges softened, the panic started losing its grip. The young man who had been trying to carry his whole life on his back stood there in Debbie's arms, silent, shaking just enough for her to know he was fighting not to fall apart. That was the pain of Joshua. He had survived too much to believe safety the first time it appeared. A child can grow older without ever feeling rescued. And Joshua had grown older that way. The years had settled into his face. His eyes carried the weight of too many calls, too many reports, too many rooms where the truth arrived too late. But beneath the age, Debbie recognized him immediately. The same posture, the same alertness. The same man who never entered a place without first measuring what could go wrong. Dotsie, he said again, softer this time. But before Debbie could answer, his eyes moved past her shoulder. He saw Joshua. The room shifted. Captain Reeves reacted before he understood. His training took over, his hand went to his weapon, and in one fast motion he aimed at Joshua. Joshua froze, not like a guilty person. Like a boy who had been threatened before. His hands moved slightly, but his body locked in place. His eyes widened, but he did not run. He had learned long ago that running could be used against him, even when he was innocent. Debbie stepped in front of him instantly. No hesitation. No thought, just instinct. Don't. Her voice was sharp, but underneath it was fear. Not fear of the captain, fear of what one wrong second could do. Captain Reeves kept the weapon raised for a moment, eyes hard, trying to understand what he had walked into. "You didn't tell me somebody else was here," he said. "Debbie didn't move from in front of Joshua. He's with me." That was all she said at first. But the way she said it made the captain lower the weapon a few inches, then a little more. He saw her face. He saw the way she planted herself between Joshua and danger. He saw something he had seen before in emergency rooms, shelters, crime scenes, and broken homes. A woman protecting a child who had already been failed by too many adults. The weapon lowered. Joshua was still breathing hard. Debbie turned slightly toward him, not enough to take her eyes fully off the captain, but enough for Joshua to see she was still there. "You're safe?" she said quietly. Joshua did not answer. That his eyes stayed on her. That mattered. Debbie invited Captain Reeves inside. The house felt smaller with him in it, not because he was loud, but because history entered with him. The old case came in with him. The missing parents, the children, the reports that didn't explain enough, the names people avoided, the brother who walked away too easily. The officer who carried children out of a house after failing to stop what happened inside it. Debbie closed the door. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Debbie said the words she knew would take him back. "Do you remember the 5 kids case?" Captain Reeves looked at her. The question did not confuse him. It landed. Hard. His face changed the way faces change when memory gets pulled out of a locked room. He remembered. Of course he remembered. There were some cases that never ended. They just stopped appearing in files. Debbie continued carefully. 4 of them were babies. One was old enough to walk. The captain's jaw tightened. He looked toward Joshua again. This time, not with suspicion. With recognition beginning to form. Debbie's voice lowered. Joshua was one of the babies. The room went quiet. Not empty quiet. Heavy quiet. The kind of quiet that carries names, dates, missing bodies, and children who grew up without answers. Captain Reeves looked at Joshua as if he was seeing 2 people at once, the young man standing in front of him, and the baby who had once been carried out of a house before the truth could be buried completely. Joshua felt the shift. Even if he did not understand all of it, he could feel the way adults looked at him when they knew more about his life than he did. That feeling had followed him for years. Caseworkers had done it. Foster parents had done it. People at schools had done it. People who read parts of his file and thought they knew him. But Debbie was different. At least he thought she was. And that was why the betrayal was already beginning to burn. Captain Reeves stayed only long enough to understand the danger had returned. He warned Debbie carefully, not in a way that made everything clear, but in the way people warn each other when the truth is too dangerous to say with open windows and thin walls. Then he left. When the front door closed behind him, the house did not feel safer. It felt exposed. Joshua stood near the dining room, staring at Debbie like he was seeing her for the first time, the same woman who had fed him. The same woman who had held him when his heart was racing, the same woman who had spoken his name like it mattered. Now she looked like another adult with a key to a room in his life he had never been allowed to enter. "You knew," he said. Debbie's face tightened. "Joshua, no." His voice rose, not loud yet, but shaking. "You knew." There it was, the first crack. Not anger alone, pain. Joshua stepped back from her, as if distance could help him think. "All these years, you knew who I was?" Debbie swallowed. "I knew some things." That's not an answer. His voice sharpened. "You kept in contact with me. You checked on me. You showed up just enough for me to think you cared." "I did care." "Then why didn't you tell me?" The question hit the room like glass breaking. Debbie had answers. Too many answers. Because he was too young. Because the wrong people were still connected. Because the case had never fully died. Because some truths can destroy a child before they are old enough to survive them. Because she was afraid. But none of those answers sounded strong enough in front of his pain. Joshua's eyes were wet now, but he was fighting it. He was fighting tears the way he fought everything else, like tears were another way to be taken advantage of. "You don't understand," he said. "You don't get what it's like to have everybody know pieces of you while you don't know yourself." Debbie's eyes filled. Joshua kept going. "I was in houses where people smiled in front of caseworkers and treated me like a burden after they left." His voice cracked. "I slept in places where I kept my shoes close because I didn't know when I'd have to run." He pointed toward his chest. "I had people tell me I was lucky, like being passed around was some kind of blessing." Debbie took one step forward. He stepped back. "No, don't." That stopped her. Joshua looked toward the hallway, toward the bathroom, toward any place with a door he could close. "I held you up here," he said, touching the side of his head. "I really did. I thought if nobody else was honest with me, Debbie was." His face twisted with hurt. "I thought you were different." Debbie almost spoke, but he didn't let her. "You let me sit at your table. You let me eat your food. You let me think I was safe." His voice dropped. "But you were holding secrets too." That sentence cut through her, because he was right. Even if she had reasons, even if she had protected him, even if every choice she made had been wrapped in fear and love and survival, she had still kept the truth from him, and Joshua had been lied to too many times to separate protection from betrayal. He turned away suddenly and rushed down the hall. The bathroom door slammed, The lock clicked. Debbie followed him but stopped outside the door. She placed her palm against it. Joshua. Nothing. Only silence. She closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Still nothing. Her voice softened, not weaker, more honest. I should have told you more than I did. Behind the door, Joshua was breathing hard again. Debbie could hear it. The same racing panic from earlier, but now it was wrapped in anger. Joshua, she said, I know you don't trust me right now. Her voice trembled slightly. And maybe you shouldn't. That was the first thing she said that sounded like truth. The breathing behind the door changed, just a little. Debbie leaned closer. But if you want to hear it, I'll tell you what I know. She swallowed. Not the clean version, not the safe version, the real one. There was no answer. But he didn't tell her to go away. So Debbie stayed outside the bathroom door, one hand against the wood, speaking to the silence like it was the only bridge left between them. I can tell you about the house. A pause. The children. Another pause. The officer who carried you out. Her voice dropped. And the people who made sure your parents were never found. Inside the bathroom, Joshua went still. For the first time, the silence wasn't empty. It was listening. And Debbie knew then, whatever came next would change everything between them. Because once she opened that part of the story, there would be no closing it again.